We are getting closer and closer to training camp, but there's still plenty more to talk about. I'm Aric DiLalla, along with the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. Steve, today we're talking about what competitions should we be watching during training camp, and I know what you want to talk about, Steve. The safeties. No, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterback, but we'll wait for that. That'll be we'll do that soon. That'll be our next episode. But we're going to focus on a bunch of other different position groups here. And Steve, there's competition all over this roster. Sean Payton has said it's one of the most competitive offseason programs he's ever had. That there's a new energy compared to last year. I think you can feel guys flying around. It's a young team, and there's a bunch of different spots from center to running back. But we wanted to touch on just a few here, and why don't we start at inside linebacker? I think Alex Singleton feels like a guy that's going to be, he's going to have the green dot on his helmet. He's going to be calling the plays. But there's several different options of guys that could line up next to him. Yeah,
Cody Barden, he's the guy who came over from Washington, the Commanders. I think he's slotted in right now, but, man, there's still a lot of competition. I know Jonas Griffith is, raring to get that position. He got a chance to start a few games a couple of years ago before he got injured. I think he has a lot of talent at that position. Man, I hate that Drew Sanders is hurt because I think he would have vied for that position as well. But it's going to be great competitions. We got great players in here to compete, and when you have the competition again, it makes everyone better. It makes the team better.
Yeah. In addition to Griffith, it was interesting. Obviously, you have Justin Cernad and. Sean Payton was also asked about that competition, and he kind of brought up an undrafted guy, Lavelle Bailey, who, man, he's big for a rookie.
Okay.
And so he'll be someone to watch that inside linebacker spot too. But Jonas Griffith is so interesting to me because really athletic. I thought did a nice job when he was in there and just has dealt with injuries a little bit the last couple of years. And so can he get healthy, challenge for that spot? I don't know. Maybe early in the year you see some guys rotating, and we know it's rare that you play base defense in the NFL too. So we'll have to see kind of how the Broncos handle all that on defense.
It'll be amazing just to see Alex Singleton take on that full role as like the leader of the defense because he's all over the field. He's leading the team, and he's led the team in tackles the last couple of years. And I wonder how out of breath he'll be to have to look over at the sidelines, get the call, and look at down and distance and remind the guys in the huddle and all that. I wonder if he'll have the energy to do that. But it's a big challenge for him, but I think he'll be up for it.
He's got a lot of energy. I think he'll be okay. The Broncos also did sign Andre Smith, a veteran, typically a special teams contributor in his career, but they kind of added him during the offseason, so we'll see how all that pans out. At corner, Steve, that's another big one. And earlier in this series, we talked about Riley Moss and his potential to maybe take a step there, but not going to be easy. I mean, you got Damari Mathis, Levi Wallace, Tremont Smith, the rookie Chris Abrams-Drain. Just what do you look for there at corner opposite an all-pro in Pat Surtain?
Yeah, well, you look for a guy who, number one, knows the defense, knows his responsibilities. Two, a person who isn't getting beat. He's a guy who's able to stay with the wide receivers when they get downfield. If we're jamming the receivers, they're jamming. They're in the right place at the right time. The defensive back, the cornerback that does that the best will be the guy that's starting opposite Pat Surtain. But you got to be a great one.
Yeah, and we talked about Riley Moss and kind of the traits he brings. Levi Wallace, Tremont Smith, obviously veterans. I'm sure they want Chris Abrams-Drain to play at some point. He was a day 3 pick, but has some really good potential there. Damari Mathis is a guy I'm actually really interested to see because he started early in his career. He kind of had that tough game in L.A. against the Chargers where it was a bunch of pass interference calls, defensive holding, and then he bounced back and played really well the rest of the season. And then last year, he starts the beginning of the year, ends up kind of shifting into more of a reserve role, and I thought he's looked better here in OTAs in the offseason program. And so it'll just be – it sounds like he's got his confidence back, and so it'll be interesting to see can he make a push for that role. Obviously, I believe a round 4 pick when he was selected a couple of years ago. So he's got the talent, but that's going to be a battle to watch. And when you're going against this receiver core, Steve, those guys are going to make some plays.
Oh, man.
You're going to make some plays.
But it's going to make them better. It's going to make both sides of the ball better. The more you compete in practice, the more you're full speed and you're challenging the other side of the ball, the better both sides are going to get.
Yeah, and we'll have to see, in the preseason, does one of these guys make a big play and prove that they deserve that job? We mentioned the receivers there briefly. Steve, this receiver group I think is pretty stacked. I mean,
super stacked.
I talked to Tim Patrick a few weeks ago, and one of the things he said is he realizes externally people aren't going to think a whole lot of this receiver group, but he knows how good this group can be, and that at the end of the season people are going to look up and say, oh, that's a pretty darn good group. I mean, you're talking about Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Troy Franklin, the rookie, Devon Vele, a late-round pick, Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds coming over from Detroit. And then you re-sign some guys, and have some guys returning, and Lil Jordan Humphrey, Jalen Virgil coming back from injury,
Yes.
Brandon Johnson, who led the team in touchdowns for part of the year, had several. And so even as Jerry Jeudy moves on, you've got a lot of options here, and Steve, not everyone's
is crazy.
Not everyone's going to make the team, obviously, and
Yeah.
so. Look at that,
But that's a great problem to have as a coach, because you know that when it's all said and done, you're going to have the best player possible out there on the field. The guy who is honed in, the guy who's worked, the guy who can play under pressure, because there's going to be some pressure. When you got 6, 7, 8 guys who are vying for that same position, it's going to be a ton of pressure, and you got to make sure you go out there and compete and win.
To me, I look at that and I say, any position group on the roster, that's going to have the most competition. There's going to be some good players that don't end up on the 53-man roster. Hopefully you get some guys on the practice squad. We'll see how it all works out. But, Steve, we're getting close here to seeing this all play out on the field. I'm excited. Still a few more things to get to, though, as we continue to count it down to camp. For the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater, I'm Aric DiLalla.